Welcome to another episode of Tips from the Swamp by Absolute Control Irrigation Specialists. Today we're going to be looking at the selector valve and solenoid area of the Eagle 900 or Eagle Rotor from Rainbird. The tools that you'll need for this, one is the Rainbird tool that is designed to work with the different operations of this sprinkler head. Secondly would be a small screwdriver. The solenoid and selector valve are in this area of the head. At this point, you will notice that there are three indicators on the selector, on the body of the head for the selector valve in this area of the sprinkler head right here. In the one position, it reads auto, which is the position you would put it in to have this thing being turned on and turned off from your irrigation control system. The center position here would be off, so that the sprinkler head would not be able to be turned on by your irrigation system or any other method. And the final position is here, which is the on position, which if you turn the selector valve to that on position, the sprinkler head will stay on until you come and turn it to the off position or back to automatic. To do that, you would use the Rainbird wrench that has a hex area designed to fit on the hex of the selector valve with a little leg out, and right now it's sitting on the sprinkler head in the automatic position. You'll notice the positioning of the handle. If I rotate this handle to the straight across position, which is the off position, the unit will now stay off. Or if I turn it all the way to the other position, that would be the on position. The sprinkler head would turn on at this point as long as there was pressure underneath it. If you're not sure where the nozzles were aiming, you'd probably take a bath at this point, but you would know if the sprinkler head was able to be turned on manually. To turn it off, you would go back to the center position. The head would shut off. And at this point, if you took a little bit of a bath, you might be a little wet. Okay. Now, if in the automatic position, you have activated this sprinkler head from the timer and it does not turn on, or it does not turn on fully, there's a couple of areas you need to check. One of them is the solenoid itself. I'm going to rotate this head so you can see this. The solenoid is a block in here so that it holds it. Solenoid is this area right here. It's an electromagnetic solenoid which will activate when given power from your irrigation timer. In a previous video, we talked about how to check the ohms resistance on the solenoid coil to make sure that it was good. That range being anywhere from 25 to 35 ohms. If it shows no reading infinity, that says that coil is bad and should be replaced. To replace that coil, you need to remove the retainer. That allows you to remove the coil and the metal bracket so you could replace the coil. If you replace the coil or not, irregardless, you want to make sure that when you reassemble this, you make sure that you put the metal bracket back on that coil. Because if not, the metal helps make the magnetic field. If it's not there, the coil will attempt to make the magnetic field. It will start to get hot and it could melt. So make sure that metal bracket is on there. The other thing we want to look at this point, while we have the coil off, if the sprinkler head did not come on fully, didn't come on at all, there's a possibility that the plunger inside of this solenoid may have a problem. And to get to that plunger, we use, again, the wrench that Rainbird manufactures to work with this head. We place it over the stem assembly. The feet go into the base, and that allows us to turn the base of the solenoid, which allows us to take the base out. At this point, you'll notice that there is a plunger inside of that base. First, you want to make sure that there's no debris in the base that might be catching or causing the plunger to jam. The second thing we want to look at is the plunger itself. And you'll notice that there is a little rubber tip here that is what seats inside the solenoid case and allows this head to shut off. When you energize the coil, this is pulled back and it allows a passage for the pressure holding the valve shut to drain and allows the unit to turn on. If the head is not turning on fully, you want to check the plunger, this rubber piece, because if it's belled out or expanded, which has happened, it may be trying to open, but it's not opening far enough to allow the head to come on fully, so it only comes on part way. To give yourself an idea if this is true, if it only comes on partially, then turn the selector valve to the on position. If it comes on fully, this is one of the areas to take a look at. Once you've cleaned that area, cleaned the plunger, and cleaned this base, put the plunger back in the base, thread it back into the solenoid cavity, using the tool to tighten it. And once it's tight, you can reinstall the coil. And remember, make sure that metal bracket is on there so the coil doesn't get too hot and self-destruct. So we put that over that, put the retainer on, and now we've made sure that the solenoid areas are correct. The next area we have to be concerned with, if it's not operating correctly, is inside the selector valve. And we'll turn this sideways here so that you can see the selector valve. And we'd have to be concerned with dirt and debris inside the selector valve. To clean that out, again, we use the Rainbird tool. It inserts inside this hex, and we literally unscrew the base. This is where it's good to have the proper tool. So we now remove the cover from the selector valve, check and make sure that it's clean, no debris in it, and we'll set that aside for reassembly. We'll set that aside. Make sure it's clean. Next, what we remove is the selector valve itself. And you'll notice the selector valve has a spring and the selector assembly. You want to make sure that the spring is clean. You want to make sure this assembly is clean. One of the areas to check is there is an O-ring seal at the top of this stem. You want to make sure that that seal is good and not broken. Otherwise, water will squirt by that. So we make sure that O-ring is good. The next thing to notice is the base of this unit, selector valve, is blue. And that is important because there is a seal down inside this cavity, which I'm about to show you. It looks like Mickey Mouse ears. The color of that seal is important to match up with the color of this base. If you can see down in there, I'm going to pull this a little farther forward here. You can see down in there, you can see that seal. And that's where it's positioned. You want to make sure that seal is intact, is not broken, that there's not a lot of dirt around it. You want to make sure it's clean. And you'll also notice that this seal is green in color. It's important to remember that you need the green seal if the base of your selector is blue. Green seal to blue. There is also a version that has a rust-colored seal. Same Mickey Mouse type ears, but rust-colored seal. The rust-colored seal would be used on a selector valve where this base is white. So remember, green to blue, rust to white. Once we've made sure all that area is clear and clean, we're now going to reassemble this. So we take the selector valve, we put the spring back on it, we reinsert it into the selector valve cavity with the point of the selector valve where there's the slot for adjusting to on-off auto is in the off position. Now we thread the selector valve cover back in. At some point it will start to tension against the spring. We will need the tool now to turn it the rest of the way and get it so it tightens up. Once that cap is tight, and it has to be tight so it won't leak by the stem, then we check the selector valve positioning using the tool again, and we find that it's now in the on position. I'm going to cycle it back to off. I'm going to cycle it over to automatic. Back to off, back to on, back to off, and back to automatic. Now that I've done that, I'm ready to test my head. Everything should now work correctly. There is one other adjustment to be aware of. Right in the middle of the stem of the selector valve, you will see a screw that you can put a small screwdriver on. By turning that screw, you can adjust how far the control valve is opening open, so you adjust how much water is coming through the head and how much pressure. From the factory, they are preset for 80 pounds of input at the base of the head. If you need to let the valve come further open, you can turn that screw and adjust that. If you don't want the head to throw as far, it's a way of actually throttling the head back so it doesn't throw its full distance by acting like a pressure regulator. That is the selector valve solenoid assembly on the Rainbird rotor. I hope this video has helped you. In the future, please feel free to contact us for more information at our website, www.absolute-control.com. If you're viewing this video on YouTube and you find it informative, please check the like spot. And if you're very interested in all that we're doing, subscribe, and you will get a chance to see all of the videos that we have put up to help with your maintaining your systems. I would like to thank you now, and this is the Gator with Absolute Control.